okay, one of the big cultural norms, cultural myths is that a college degree is the best way to success. Now, that may have been true based on where culture was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's not true anymore as education continues to evolve, as technology evolves. And one of the things I wanted to point out, George, is a recent Yahoo News story that talks about a new report that shows which colleges offer the best ROI. So we got a lot of money questions and calls. Obviously, people don't want to win with their money on the show. And so ROI standing for return on investment. So if you think about how much money you spend over 4 years, and here's the deal. The data shows us that a lot of kids are taking 5 to 6 years. So this is let's call it a 4 to 6 year spend on college. All right. And so just touching on a few things from the article. The report has a calculator where you can go in and you can search 3,300 colleges in the United States. And from this report, you see a lot of technical institutions, science and engineering type institutions tend to have a greater ROI, right? Because of the explosive growth in those areas. And, you know, the even the entry level in those areas is quite nice. And here's how they came up with it. How they come up with, because I think this is important for consumers, is they're thinking, what's the right school for my kid? What's the right school for me? More on that in a second. But this report basically took the college earnings premium, which is the pay bump that students would get after graduation or as a result of graduation, and they divide that number by the cost of tuition. And then it's going to take into account a range of other factors like student debt, to how long it takes to complete it. So what are you racking up in debt? How long is it taking to get to the degree? As well as what are the labor market challenges that graduates will face? To give you an example of what I'm talking about here. We know that over 50%, I think it was about 52% of college graduates in 2021 took 6 months to find a job in the field they went to be trained for. So this takes into account that as well.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to dive into this very deeply, but public institutions via this report, this ROI calculator, George, tended to do much better. The private nonprofit institutions were next, and then the private for-profit institutions, not so good.
Uh-oh.
So now let me just call this out because this is a trap. The private for-profit institutions that did not have a good ROI, in fact, according to this report, just 69% offered a positive return. And I don't want to name names and hack anybody off.
Sure.
But, you know, they're out there, they're for-profit and they're big box. It's like, hey, come here, we'll get you trained for continuing education, blah, blah, blah. So be careful.
I'm looking at some interesting numbers here on the calculator.
What do you got?
I typed some schools in just to see. My alma mater has a $200,000 positive ROI.
Oh, very nice.
Texas Tech, Dr. John Deloney's alma mater, has a $1 million ROI. Typed in Harvard University, just to see, $3 million ROI. And so that's what they're saying. It's very interesting, but to look at different schools, and this varies person to person. You know, if you get a full ride, well, that changes the game versus going $300,000
And let's also understand, we are not endorsing this calculator. I want to be very clear. I'm saying it's a very interesting
tool.
It's an interesting tool, but I think you've got to take into effect the student loan nonsense.
Yes.
And what you're going to saddle yourself with. And I'm just going to say this to everybody listening and watching. When was the last time you went to the doctor's office or the dentist office or sitting down with your CPA, and before you decided to pay them for their services, did you ask them to show you their diploma? Nobody cares.
I scan the wall looking at the frame.
I know you do, George, but you're neurotic. Nobody else does that. No, we're kidding. He doesn't do that. So this is the point. Let me just also give you a two-part question that I'm trying to help parents grasp. Is college the only way for your kid to get where they want to go? Secondary question, is it the best way? If the answer is no to either one of those, please be okay going to the block party or the golf course or the soccer game and going, hey, my kid's going into trade school. Stop being ashamed of it, for crying out loud.
It wears me out, the shame that we've put on community colleges, on trade schools, on state schools even, and it's got to stop because it's putting our kids in chains for 20 years so that the parents can feel good, so they can brag to their friends about where their kid went to school.
Yeah, it's become about status, folks.
Don't go for the football team, don't go for the landscaping, don't go for the water slide.
Yeah, if you've got to get the degree, get it. If it's the best way to get where you want to go, do it. If it's not, get over yourself.
And this is a great pitch for everyone to go watch Borrowed Future. It's 88 minutes long. You've got to see this. Sit down with your kids. Parents, if you don't know how to have this conversation, this documentary can be a great place to start. This is a world-class documentary we put out late last year. It's like $5 to go watch this thing. You can get it on Amazon Prime, on Apple TV, at our website, borrowedfuture.com. And listen to the podcast. That's a free resource, Borrowed Future. We did 8 episodes on that, on the student loan crisis, and it was eye-opening. But it just made me go, I want to shake every student and go, there's another way.
Well, you
don't have to fall for the traps.
You realize that higher education has become about their fortunes, not your futures.
Amen.
So there you go.
You should tweet that. That's good.
Yeah, I'm working on that one. You need to spread that one.